Hello, I am CS Jasmine. Welcome to my channel. Today in this video, I will teach you the next form of business organization, that is statutory bodies and corporation. The few forms of business organizations, I have already made video on them, which are sole proprietorship, HUF, partnership and company. If you have not seen them yet, go back and see the link in the description box. Before proceeding further, I would request you to subscribe the channel and press the bell icon for any update. Starting with statutory bodies. Now, statutory body is a body created under the Act of Parliament or an Act of State Legislature. This kind of organization, it comes under whether the Act of Parliament or Act of State Legislature. The best example is Reserve Bank of India under Reserve Bank of India Act, and same goes with State Bank of India. Then it is an autonomous corporate body created and set up by the statute. Now, what does the act or what does the statute does to these kind of statutory bodies? This form of organization needs a proper act or a proper statute because it defines its objectives, powers and functions. What the organization will do or what are its objectives, powers of employees, functions of management, everything is defined clearly in the act or statute that governs such type of statutory body. So this is called a form of organization which is statutory body. Now, what is a corporation? A public corporation, it is a combination of public ownership, public accountability and business management for public end. As the name suggests, public corporation, everything revolves around the public only. The ownership is also public, accountability, they are accountable to public, and the management, the way it is managed for public end for the benefit of the public at large. The best examples of public corporation are LIC and ESCIC. Now, it is a kind of business organization that it has flexibility of private enterprise with public ownership and accountability. You cannot say it's totally private or totally public. It's mix of both, taking up the benefits of both type of enterprises. Now, public organization is an organization that is clothed with the power of government but is possessed with the flexibility and initiative of private enterprise, taking up the powers which the government gives it and the flexibility and initiative to take up the business to another level of the private enterprise. This is the way how we define a public corporation. Starting up with the features of statutory body, the first feature is corporate body. It's a corporate body established through a special act of parliament. Now, what does the act do? It defines its powers and privileges and its relationship with government department and ministries, because statutory body, as I have told you earlier, it's created by an act of parliament or act of state legislature. It is always governed by that particular act. But what does the act do in these all cases? Act is there to define its power, its privileges, its relationship with all the government department and ministries. It is a corporate body. The second feature is legal entity. As I've told you, in company form of organization also, in the same way, it has also perpetual succession. That means it goes on, and common seal. Common seal is a kind of signature like a normal person signs on his behalf, giving his approval to any agreement or any contract. In the same way, the statutory body also has a common seal that is put upon the agreements as a sign of that, signature of that statutory body, and it can acquire property in its own name, and because it's a legal entity, it can sue and can be sued, and also it can enter into a contract by itself. The third feature is government ownership. It's very simple. I've told you earlier also, the public corporation, it is wholly owned by the center or state government. It has the flexibility of private enterprises, but the ownership lies in the hands of the government only. The fourth feature is financial independence. Now, it enjoys financial autonomy and can borrow money from public. Now, the initial capital and borrowings, they are provided by the government, but in the long run it is supposed to be self-supporting. So it has financial independence, but initially it is supported by the government. Then in the long run, it's been said that it can borrow money from public and be self-supporting. The next feature is accounting system. Now the corporation, it is not subject to the budgetary, accounting and audit regulations applicable to government departments. It's very important. It is just the ownership that lies in the government department to the government, but otherwise it has the flexibility of the private enterprise. So it is not subject to what the budgetary or accounting or the audit regulations are being applicable to the government department. And it is generally, the corporations are generally exempt from the rigid rules applicable to the expense of public funds. It is not like that because the government is the owner, so it will be the rules, the regulations will be applicable to this form of organization. This form of organization is exempt from the rigid rules of the government. The next feature is management and personnel. A public corporation is managed by a board of directors appointed by the government, definitely because it enjoys the flexibility of private enterprise. So the management is the board of directors, and a very important point is that employees need not to be the civil servants. It's not important that by the government they need not to be the civil servants. And the last feature is service motive. Why do we create public corporations or statutory bodies? It is the primary motive of such corporation is public service only rather than private profits. It's a kind of business organization that is expected to operate in a business-like manner, but not for profits. What generally the businesses look for profits, but the corporation works like a business but looks for public service motive. So these above were the features of this form of organization, statutory bodies and corporation. Now comes the advantages of statutory bodies and corporation. The first advantage is operational autonomy. A public corporation enjoys internal autonomy as there is no parliamentary interference. There is no interference in its workings, so it enjoys complete internal autonomy, and it has high degree of freedom, boldness and enterprise in the management of undertakings. It's a very good sign that no parliamentary interferences are there. The enterprise can work on its own with its own freedom, with its own boldness. The next advantage is flexibility of operations. Now it enjoys flexibility and initiative in business affairs as it is free from bureaucratic control. Again, bureaucratic control can be so dangerous for the organization because it could lead to wrong decisions. It could lead to illegal activities. So to save that, there is no bureaucratic control. So there is always a flexibility in operations. The enterprise itself decides how to work, what to work, and how to get the work done from the employees without any outer political, bureaucratic or parliamentary pressure in its organization. The next advantage is continuity. Now it can maintain continuity of policy and operations as it is not affected by any political changes. As I'm telling you again and again, it is owned by the government, but it has no interference by the government. So when it's not affected by any political changes, then this form of organization, it continues its policy and its operations according to its own wish. The next advantage is special privilege. Now it grants special privilege to this form of organization because it has its own law. It has its special law, and the special law can be tailored to meet specific needs. Sometimes when the law is made, the conditions are different. Then with passing time, the conditions change, the industry changes, the market policies change, then the law gets amended. As we all know, the special acts, the laws that are being formed for such public organizations, such public corporations, they get amended from time to time with the changing era, with the changing time, it gets amended. In that way, any special condition can be met up by the amendment of that special law. The next advantage is availability of managerial talent. Now it can employ professional managers by offering them better term and conditions. So it is better than hiring government employees because the terms and conditions are not good, or not government conditions are not better in that case. Here it is good, and these above all are the advantages of statutory body and corporation. Now we will talk about the disadvantages of this form of organization, starting with the first one, difficult formation. Now it's very difficult and time consuming to form this form of organization, as special law needs to be passed in the parliament. Because it is governed by the special law, by the special act, it needs to be passed in the parliament, then only the formation could start. So it consumes a lot of time and lot of energy. The next disadvantage is inflexibility. Now it is very difficult because the objects and powers, they are governed by the special act only, by the special law only. And whenever you need to change the objects, whenever you need to change the powers, the operations and everything, you have to go back to the parliament. The special law has to be amended time and again. So it takes a lot of time and it has a lot of inflexibility in its working and operation. Excessive accountability. Now ministerial and political interference in day-to-day working do not allow internal autonomy in practice. I have told you earlier, they are not interfering, but there are frequent debates and frequent discussions on reports on how the public corporation is working, because it is owned by the government, and due to reporting issues, due to the debating and discussions, sometimes there is excessive accountability. It becomes excessively responsibility of the ministries, of the political parties, that they interfere knowingly or unknowingly in the day-to-day working of this form of organization. The last disadvantage is clash of divergent interests. Now, governed by the board, of owned by the government, and sometimes there is an emphasis on service motive and there is lack of incentive, which normally reduces the profitability of operations. There is clash of divergent interest, because when the board of directors are constituted, they give representation to divergent interests, and at that point of time a conflict may arise, and this always hampers the smooth functioning and efficient functioning of the corporation. Now these above are the 4 disadvantages of this form of organization. Now will come the suitability of this form of organization. What type of businesses will suit to be worked in this form of organization? There are 3 points. The first is, it is appropriate for public enterprises of industrial and commercial nature. There are public enterprises which are industrially involved, or which are in commercial nature, so it's a good form of organization for those enterprises, as the ownership will lie in the hands of government only, but the management will be flexible enough to work like a private enterprise, and it will flourish in this form of organization. Then it is suitable for undertakings requiring monopoly powers, like public utilities. It is very useful when you give these type of functionings which have monopoly powers. So what happens, because the ownership again lies with the government only, it never goes out of the government. It is worked up according to the law set by the parliament, according to the law approved by the government, but it is worked up by the private enterprises. It has a lot of flexibility, it has a lot of efficiency in its working, because it has the qualities of a private enterprise, so it's very useful in this kind of organizations. Then it is suitable for undertakings which may not be self-supporting and require grants by the state. I have told you earlier also in the point where we read about the financial independence. That point was in the features of this form of organization, financial independence. It has financial independence, but initially it is supported by the government. Initially it is given grants by the government to start the business, and then afterwards it can ask to the public for the grants, and it can be self-supporting in the long run. But for the starting, it is good that the government helps it, gives its grant, and it is not self-supporting in the beginning. That form of organization can be worked up or can be started up like a public corporation. Thank you for watching my video. Please like, share, comment and subscribe, and press the bell icon for any update. Any topic related explanation or any topic suggestion is invited in the comment section below.